Hi everyone, Laura here at Cotswold Characters. Lots of people have been asking in my videos what materials and tools I use to get some of the textures that I do on my sculptures. So I thought I would go through the popular tools that I use on a day-to-day basis during my sculptures, and then obviously let you know where I got them from. So let's just run through quickly what I use then on a day-to-day basis. So probably the most popular tool that I use is this very fine needle tool. A lot of people were struggling to get hold of these because they aren't actually listed obviously as a sculpting tool. These are you can get from eBay and are from a company called PME, and they are actually cake making, cake tool making company for people that do sugarcraft type, obviously cake toppers, etc. So I was looking for a needle tool that was a lot finer than normal clay needle tools, because if you look for clay needle tools in sculpting, you tend to get something around that thickness. But when I do my pet sculptures, I tend to use a much finer needle to get a finer kind of fur detail. So that's very useful. I actually got this from eBay and I think it was around £4 to £5. They do have a tendency to snap if you put too much pressure on them. So I always keep a spare anyway, just in case, because I can be a little bit heavy-handed at times. So those are the two needle tools that I use. That for thicker texture, obviously, and for adding things like beads and things into my sculptures. Sometimes I'll add coloured beads for eyes, etc. So I tend to use them for that as well. I also use a craft knife, basically to cut out shapes, cut bits of clay off when I need them, etc. So yeah, I use that one quite a lot as well. You can get that from any craft store, Hobbycraft, you can get it online. They're quite obviously common, so you shouldn't have too much issue trying to find these. Now, a popular tool that I use, but unfortunately I can't seem to find anywhere that sells these anymore. I think this may have been an exclusive thing when I went to the NEC Cake Show in Birmingham. It was on a stand where a lady was actually making sugar fondant faces, and she was using this tool to make smiley faces, well, like a smiley mouth. So when I was first starting out sculpting, I was really struggling to kind of do a nice, clean, smooth mouth on my sculptures. So this tool was very handy. As you can see, it's kind of shaped like the sort of tools you get in the nail bars that they use to kind of push the cuticles down on your nails. That's what it reminds me of. But it does have a pointy end as well, which can be useful. So I'll just give you an example of what this tool does. So I've got a piece of clay here. So you just kind of get the tool, you push it directly down into the clay until the kind of like angled edge has disappeared, and then you kind of tilt it upwards and you get like a kind of smiley mouth. Obviously you can move it around just to make it even more smiley. But yeah, that's a very useful tool, especially when you're doing like cute characters. So yeah, I'd highly recommend if you can try and find something like this. I haven't seen one since that cake show, but if you can try and find one online, it would have been for sugar fondant type characters. So maybe have a look online for something like that. Okay, so I use a variety of paintbrushes, but unlike other sculptors, I don't actually use paintbrushes to sculpt with. Some people use these to kind of smooth out surfaces on their clay, or, you know, obviously I've seen one lady actually use it to kind of create creases in the clay. but I don't use my paintbrushes for that. I tend to use these for painting only, so I paint eyes, etc., so need quite a very fine paintbrush for that type work. Now these tools I got from Amazon. I can't remember the price of them because it was quite a while ago now that I got these. But it's kind of like a duo tool because you get like a ball stylus at the end, and they're all different sizes, as you can see. And then on the other end, you get some silicone type tips. I think these come in a pack of, let me have a look. So yeah, pack of 5. So these are all the different tools that you get in one pack. So obviously they're all kind of different shapes, but the one I use quite a lot is probably this one with just a simple cone shape on the end. So I'll use that again to make little indentations in the clay quite smoothly. And I like these because they're quite flexible. Some of the silicone types tools you get online can be a little bit too firm, and then you end up not getting the shape in the clay that you want. So yeah, these are quite useful. So I'd highly recommend you getting some of these. Another popular tool I used was from Sculpey, pearlizing tools. So obviously they're just a bit like knitting needles, but on the end you get your pearlizing tool. So they're 3 different sizes, and when you press that into the clay you do get like a kind of pearlized effect. So I'll just give you an example. So, you know, good for making like dragon skin or lizard skin, that type thing on your clay. So I find those quite useful. These are my ball stylus tools that I use quite a lot. I use these mainly for smoothing out clay. If I want to get a nice rounded edge, this is a good tool for that sort of thing. Or if I need to create a hole for adding something, then the pointy end's good for that. And then the ball stylus I tend to use to create eye sockets and that sort of thing. So yeah, they're quite useful. I've got some different sizes here. Again, these were from eBay, but I think you can get them on Amazon as well. But this one I actually got again from the NEC Cake Show in Birmingham. I would highly recommend you looking at tools for sugarcraft as well as sculpture, just because you might actually find some tools that you would not really find by just searching for sculpting tools. So that's a good tip. Just have a look for cake making tools as well, because you do get some really good tools for sugar fondant which work perfectly fine with clay as well. So that's a little tip for you. I also use this on occasion. It's just like a kind of wired brush, so obviously that's really good at creating like a mottled effect. Obviously because the bristles are quite firm, you know, you get a really nice texture with it, and I really like this. Just make sure you keep it clean, because these do have a tendency to go a tiny bit rusty if you get them wet. So yeah, and you don't want to obviously dirty your clay, but yeah, they're very useful. Sometimes I use knitting needles, again for smoothing out clay, that type thing, or creating indents. They're actually really good because they're nice and smooth, the clay doesn't stick to them. So I'd highly recommend having a look at some different sized knitting needles, because they do come in use as well. They're also very good as well for creating ruffles on like dresses or wedding dresses, for your wedding toppers, etc. So if you're creating a wedding dress, sometimes I'll place these underneath the clay and put the clay on top, and it'll create a nice ridge, so it looks like obviously there's folds and things in the dresses. So these are quite useful for that as well. Cutting blades. I think everybody uses cutting blades just to obviously again, cut bits of clay off the bigger block, so you can cut bits off. So again, they're useful. Another thing I got from the cake show was this acrylic roller. I know you can get lots of acrylic rollers for clay, but the ones that I've seen from like Fimo, etc., seem to be hollow. And obviously if I put too much pressure on the roller, they were cracking, whereas this one doesn't because it's solid. So they're very, very useful. I've had this one now for about 5 years. You know, and I've had no issues with it breaking. I've even dropped it on the floor a few times. So yeah, it's quite a solid piece of acrylic. So yeah, I'd highly recommend getting yourself one of these. Not very expensive. I got this one from the cake show, but I'm pretty sure you can get them online. Again, have a look for Sugarcraft rollers and I'm sure something will come up. Now for the clay that I use, the majority of my sculptures now, I use Super Sculpey in beige. You can get one that's grey, which is a little bit firmer than Super Sculpey original. I've heard that it's very good for making, you know, sort of like hands, tails, etc., because it's a bit more robust than this one. But to be honest, for the sculptures that I make, this one's more than fine. So I use this one quite a lot. It's very easy to blend. It's very easy to sculpt with, very easy to create textures on, and it's very good to paint as well. So yeah, I'd highly recommend using Super Sculpey as either a beginner or if you know you do have some experience with clay. If you've not used this one before, it's very good. Just obviously make sure you mix it quite a lot before you use it, so that you don't get any marks in the clay. But it comes out a very nice kind of skin tone colour, so I use this quite a lot on my human sculptures. Another type of clay that I started out with and I still use every so often now is Fimo Soft. I don't use Fimo Professional just because I find it too hard going on your hands, whereas Fimo Soft is a lot softer. You don't have to spend hours and hours trying to condition it and make it soft enough to, you know, put details in it, etc. So Fimo Soft is, you know, quite a good one to use as well. So yeah, that's the clay that I use. Another little tip I'll give you before you obviously touch your clay that you're going to be sculpting with is to get yourself a small piece of white clay and some baby wipes. I use these to keep my clay nice and clean, so if it gets any bits of fluff or dirt on, then obviously I can just use a baby wipe to gently take any dirt off the clay. And then before I even touch the clay, I'll wipe my hands with a wet wipe, and then I'll use a piece of white scrap piece of white clay and roll this into my hands and fingers, because you'd be surprised how much dirt you actually get in the little grooves and things, in your fingerprints, etc. And this just picks out any tiny bits of dirt that you might get, and that is how I keep my clay so clean. Quite a few people have asked me that, so that's quite a good tip. So yeah, I hope you found this video useful. That's just obviously the tools that I use on a regular basis, but like I said, some of the tools you might be able to find easily on Amazon or eBay. With that, those are the two main places I get my sculpting tools from. Unfortunately, some of them I did get from the NEC Cake Show, so you might not be able to get everything, but I'm sure you could have a look online and see what you can find. But yeah, I hope you found this video useful. That was just going through the tools that I use. But yeah, if you have any other questions, drop me a comment below and I'll do my best to answer them for you. Thanks, bye.